Hello there, my lovelies. Welcome to another episode of Listening to the Voices in Our Heads with me, Jenna O'Malley, your soul writer, author of the Arsinoe Forest Alliance, Books 1 and 2, with Book 3, Bound by Vengeance in Mind, on the way for Pride Month 2021. Today we are visiting with a dear author friend, Stephen W. Briggs, concussion survivor, plumber, writer, cyclist, friend, and more. We'll talk about the importance of, protecting the voices in your heads while also being sure to listen to them, especially when your health demands you do so. For reference, we in no way endorse our viewers self-diagnosing a concussion. If you want more information about concussions, please contact your local emergency department or emergency health services if you think you have one. Otherwise, check the description box below for more information. As always, my lovelies, take care of yourself a little bit better each and every day. Let's rock this! Welcome back there, my lovelies, to another episode of Listening to the Voices in Our Heads with me, Jenna O'Malley, your soul writer. And we have a dear friend here with us today. How are we doing?
Good. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you very much for being here. Stephen W. Briggs, right?
Correct.
Is another author friend, and tell us a little bit about yourself, the books you write, the genre you write, things of that nature.
So we can start with the Stephen W. Briggs. I had to put the W in there. That's my middle initial because there is a old Stephen Briggs that was an author back in the 60s and 70s. So when I started this whole process, I didn't want to be tripping over his stuff. So I put the W in there. So I always try to make that a point of bringing up so that when people Google search and stuff, they're not realizing the guy on the screen and the guy on this page here is two different people kind of thing. So yeah, you always have to put that W in there. That's pretty important. I write thriller books. You can see those are the two covers behind me there. Family of Killers. I'll get this right. Is the first book. It was released back in January, and that is called Family of Killers: Memoirs of an Assassin. That book is it's about an Irish family, 3 generations, and each generation has improved their skills of killing. They're one of the largest organizations for crime families in Northern Ireland. So what happens? The main character, David Grant, is the 3rd generation throughout the family. And when he's a young boy, his father's doing a job. It doesn't go well. They have to move to Southern Ontario. The book takes place in 2 different countries: Northern Ireland, where I was actually born, and then Canada, Southern Ontario, where I live now. So I did move, just like the character in the book. I did move from Northern Ireland to Canada. So this family, they obviously do assassinations, and that's David, the 3rd generation. That's his specialty. He works for governments and other organizations. They also sell weapons throughout the world, hide people, all kinds of stuff like that. So the first book takes you from David's life when he's 7 up to 2013. So it kind of brings you through his training with the family. It brings you. I threw in a couple of like little specialty jobs that had some kind of meaning to it, and then obviously there's this whole big underlying theme to the whole story of where they're trying to. They're working through a whole series of issues where this one person just keeps involving himself in the family. So that's the first book. And then the second book comes out in August, Lies Leads to Death. And what I've done is I've kind of went back through that whole time period of David, and I've taken a small little piece of it, about a year and a half of the early 1990s. And that is where that whole book takes place, where the family is dealing with other mafias and other mobsters coming into Southern Ontario and having to deal with the stress of that, as well as working as a undercover kind of group for the CIA and a couple of other organizations around the world. So both are thrilling. Both have lots of adventure in them, page-turning adventures, and a few people die here and there.
And sounds like a lot of good Irish and Irish Canadian / Irish American history.
Hmm.
Wow. As somebody who is Irish American, wow.
Yeah. So what I tried to do is I tried to bring in some historical realism too. So some of the stuff that I write about in Northern Ireland actually did happen. It's just to put a spin on it, and some of the stuff that's happened throughout the world too. In the second book, I also put a spin on, but you can kind of sit there and go, oh, I remember that in the news, and then I've got my part to it as well. So yeah, so and if you lived in Southern Ontario, it definitely hits some parts of Toronto, Hamilton. So I've got a lot of people that read the first book that have said, oh, you know what, I remember driving down that street, and I drove down that street after I read your book, and I was thinking, like, imagine this character on that street doing what you were saying and stuff. So I tried to bring a lot of realism into the book too, with street names and stuff, just so that people could recognize it, and it makes it more real.
Definitely so, especially since you have the readers coming back and saying, wait a minute, I'm having like character overlap deja vu. That's
Mm-hmm.
amazing. So, has writing always been your life? And if not, what else? Like with your family, your careers, and who's the man behind the pages?
So I'm actually a master plumber. I work for a large university in Southern Ontario right now. I take care of all the plumbers, electricians. I take care of all the utilities on the campus. So that's my day job. My night job is writing. Um, so when I was a kid, growing up in high school, even in a little bit of college, I did a bunch of creative writing. I always loved that. I always felt like I had a book in me. You know how they always say everyone's got a book to write, kind of thing. I always believed that, but yeah, once I hit my 20s,
Actually.
once I hit my 20s, my kids came along. You're working on your career. I had my own plumbing business at that time too, so it's one of those little things you might, you know, you dealt with. But I was into sports. I was into like bodybuilding a bit. I got into fighting. And cycling's a big part of my life as well. So it was one of those things where, as the kids grew up, I always kept thinking, oh, I would love to write a book. Every time I wrote a book, I go, I think I could do that. But I never had the time. Like a lot of things with kids and stuff, right? Like they become the priority, and you have that window between when they're born and say like 16 to 18 years old when
When
they're a
I
lot
get
more.
them as a high school teacher.
There you
Yes,
go.
yes, I
Yeah.
totally understand. I get it. I get it. That's my wheelhouse. I get it.
Yeah, so that's where, then all of a sudden me and my wife kind of got our lives back, so to say, right? Because you have that freedom because you're not taking them to sports and doing things like that. A lot of great memories with all that with the kids and stuff, but then all of a sudden you're back to having free time. So that's where I kind of got back into the writing.
You had more time in your schedule for you, and finally the book could come out. I love
Mm-hmm.
it. So, plumbing, how does how did you get into that? I'm just curious. Is it like a friend of the family got you into it, or because
Yeah,
it's
so when I
not
was
a bad trade? A lot of my students whom I've taught in the last 10 years are making way more than me because they went into plumbing and similar careers. So no
Mhm.
shame. I'm just like, wait a minute, you were taking creative writing classes. How'd you get into the plumbing gig?
So back when I was in high school in the summers, I worked for a plumbing company that was their father was a friend of my father's, and I was always a bigger kid, so they always wanted, and I worked hard for them. So they took me over their nephew, and a couple other close friends. So I worked 2 summers with them, made some pretty good money, bought myself a real nice bicycle. But yeah, that was kind of my summer job. And then when I graduated from high school, I wanted to be a cop, and they kept saying, "Hey, why don't you come work for us?" And I went to college to be a police officer and stuff, but didn't work out just with the way things changed in Ontario back in the early 90s.
Mm-hmm.
And I got back into the plumbing, and it's been a pretty good trade for myself. My younger son is also just apprenticing right now as a plumber too. So
I was just about
yeah.
to ask if this was a traditional apprenticeship, because here in the
Mhm.
US, a lot of students are going to trade schools that use the apprenticeship model as their like clinical hours, for lack of a better terminology. But a lot of
Right.
people have forgotten, I'm sure if you go get hired as like a yard jockey or those simple jobs that you don't need skill or much skill to train for, it becomes an apprenticeship sometimes. To any of my students who find this is proof that happens. I've been telling them
Yep.
that for 10 years. They don't believe me. This is proof it happens past the 60s. Okay. I kid you not. I've been told that. That doesn't happen anymore.
Really?
This ain't the 60s.
Yeah. So that's how I got into plumbing. My son, he did a co-op in high school with a plumbing company, and because I kind of knew them too. And I was out of the business now. I was working for the university, but so they hired him on, and he's been doing a traditional apprenticeship with him. So like you said, instead of being in school more, he's actually on the tools, and he has 3 school terms that are only 2 months each, kind of thing. So we still have the old way of doing apprenticeships here, where it's 90% tools and 3 school terms where you're in class.
Learn the safety code and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha.
So like you said, any of your students, there is good money in trades right now too, because it's especially like I'm sure the States are the same, but in Canada, there's nobody here, so it's really hard, and you're in demand.
We're desperate for tradespeople here.
Yep.
And one of my nephews actually wanted to go into architecture and be like, he started as doing summer carpentry jobs during his senior year of high school. And he ultimately went and got his GED, dropped out, got his GED, because he said, I could make more my senior year on a construction site. And this was 10 years ago, because kid's not much younger than me, but he's making so much money now. He said, all I do is install door frames and drywall all day, Aunt Jen. That's all I do. And I get paid $50 an hour.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. Like, not ridiculous. It's good.
I'm like I said, wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
For some reason, both countries have gotten away, like back, like even in the 70s or whatever, everything was go to university, get an education. But you know what? So you think about it, you go to university, you spend 4 years, you pay for that education. Whereas an apprenticeship, you're actually being paid for your education.
Yep. And you need a balance for a balance of both. I would say probably would work best here in the US. I don't know if the same can be set up in Canada, but I imagine a mirror of that could be true to a degree. You need some people from one realm and some people from the other to kind of make it work. Yeah,
exactly. But traditionally it's been pushed that there's way too many people sitting at a desk and not enough learning the tools, kind of thing.
Agreed. Very much agreed. So as far as translating everything back to writing, what is your biggest fear and your biggest excitement then as an author?
So my biggest fear is that it all goes away one day, right? That you're going to wake up one morning and you're going to sit down to write and you're just going to stare at the page. And I've had that happen to me once. I've only had writer's block, knock on wood, once, where I sat down and I thought the book had to go this way. And the universe, or whatever you want to call it, that power that puts that idea in your head said, no. So we're going to sit here and you're going to stare at that page until you figure out I'm doing this. And when actually, it was funny. My oldest son came down and I kind of had my hands in my head and he goes, what's wrong? I said, I don't know. I can't do this. It's gone. And then I kind of sat back, took a breath and said, okay, what do you want? Because I had this one idea that I thought this is where the book's going to go. And the book's going, no, we're going over here. And when it's funny, that day I sat down when I finally let it go and said, okay, fine. And I started typing. I think in about 4 hours, I wrote 8,000 words. It was amazing. Yeah. It just said, okay, fine. Here, I'll let you, now that you've let me in control again, boom. And it just dropped out of me. It was amazing.
As far as you mentioned previously that you didn't kind of intend to become an author, really? Like, the day you started writing these books, what's the story behind that specifically?
So that's when things get weird.
We enjoy chaos and weird around here. Come on, lay it on us.
So growing up, talking about sports and stuff, both my kids were in karate, martial arts. and as parents, you would go sit and watch. So I started getting involved again, got into it, went to a different dojo and started training with a world champion. Really improved my skills over a few years. So I was training with a world champion karate fighter and stuff. We were doing a whole bunch of things. I'd won a Canadian championship, and I was going for another championship and stuff. So we would train. Some nights we were training 4 hours a night, and what happens is when you're training, you're taking little punches in the head, right? And you don't feel them, you don't know them, but as you dehydrate, it becomes worse, right? So you could almost say you're having, just little taps on the head, but enough to start rattling your brain up a bit. So that one night we were training, and we were training pretty hard because we were both going for championships a month later or so. And I guess the best way to put it is I zigged when I should have zagged, and I took a shin in the head right here, and it was bad. I didn't go down. I just did one of those, like you see it in UFC every once in a while when a fighter gets hit pretty hard. The eyes glaze over, but they just kind of just keep that punching motion going and just keep moving, and you pull yourself out of it. So that's what happened to me. That night I lived 3 kilometers away from the dojo, literally like 3 turns to get from the dojo to my house. And I had to use the GPS on the car to get me home because I couldn't remember how to get home. That's when I knew something was wrong. The next day I went into work. I had a real bad head. Didn't sleep well at all that night. Had a real bad headache. Went in the next day, and I'm sitting looking at my computer, and the guy beside that shares an office with me, he looked into the office kind of thing, and we were talking. He goes, "You're not going to turn your computer on today?" And to me, it looked like I was glaring at the sun. I just looked like I was staring right into the heart of the sun. And I said, "My computer is on and it's really bright." And he goes, "No, that's a black screen." I'm going, "That's not a black screen." I said, so that's when I realized something was wrong. So I went to see the doctor. We did a bunch of tests and stuff, and we realized I've had a few concussions before, but this was a real bad one. And more or less, according to my doctor, this is probably the last one I should have. So we sat and we had a good conversation about me fighting, and his comment was, "So are you a millionaire from this?" And I said, "No." And he goes, "If you want to turn, when you turn 50, if you want your wife to be changing your diaper and feeding you, through a straw, that's fine. But if not, you might want to stop." So I stopped. But with concussions comes a lot of bad stuff too, right? Like I had headaches that, I would take a week of migraines over some of the headaches I had. The self-doubt, the mental issues that all come through the healing process. So there was some very it's funny because I talk about it and go this is how I became a writer, but also there was a lot of dark times with it too. And a lot of people that I know that have had concussions, they don't get the opportunity I had, and they kind of fall to that dark side where that is. There's crazy thoughts in your head and all that, right? Luckily, I have a great wife and a good family that supported me through it all. So the one thing my doctor said is find something to work on, right? So I'm a big time cyclist. I'll do hundreds of kilometers on a bike ride kind of thing, or, I'll do 200-300 kilometers in a week, so I'd be out biking, listening to music, just down by Niagara Falls and stuff, enjoying the beautiful scenery along the escarpment, stuff like that. And this character just kept playing in the background. This character of this boy that becomes an assassin, and the jobs he would do. And I'd be biking, and I'd see little spots, on the road, going, "You know what? You could easily kill somebody there and hide the body," and little things like that. So I was embarrassed to tell anyone about it, but this is where it all started. Is I literally was sitting down, in this room here, and I'd get up at 4:30 on a Saturday morning, and I would write, start writing notes. That turned into a chapter, and then into 2 or 3 chapters. And my wife finally came down one morning wondering what I was doing every Saturday morning so early. And I said to her, "Here, you read this, I'll go make breakfast." And she goes, "Read what?" And I'm going, "I don't know. Read this." And she's going, "Nicole." So she read it. Yeah, I didn't know. At that point, I didn't even think it was a book. It was just me just putting these thoughts out, right? It was kind of just chunks of, the first chapter of Family of Killers kind of thing. That I probably went over 2 or 3 times, but that was just a short story. That wasn't really it. You know what I mean? And then the second chapter, and then I had this other chapter where he goes and does a hit, it was just all over the place. So then I started thinking, she's read it, and she went "Holy smoke, okay, this is actually really good, but what is it? And I'm going, I don't know.
I
So
don't
I started,
know.
yeah. So I started just kind of like, instead of having to like, scurry down to the basement in the middle of the night and do this before anyone got up, I was able to like actually sit and talk about it and go, okay, maybe this is a book, right? So this was like 2 years ago still, but I like more, I guess now when you think about it, it's been 3 or 4 years, but it started building, right? And it took 2 years to write. And I was embarrassed to tell anyone, right? Because I am not, none of my friends, like there isn't one person I've told I'm a published author that go, oh yeah, of course you are. It's like, what? When did that happen?
Hashtag imposter syndrome. Oh
Yeah,
my goodness.
So as I started telling a couple close friends about it and, giving them a chapter, here, read this and tell me what you think. Because obviously my wife's going to, no matter what you write, your spouse is going to say, hey, that's pretty good, right? So I gave it to a couple friends, same thing. And then I gave it to a few more friends. And then finally, after probably about 18 months, I had 120,000 words kind of thing of this story of this character from from when he was pulled out of his bed in Northern Ireland to his last job when he actually gets to go back to Northern Ireland and kind of have some closure. And I'm sitting there going, okay, so now what? Right? So I revised it. Yeah, it's one of those things where you start revising and revising, going like, well, what am I going to do with this though? So it got to the point where I thought, okay, well, I guess like the next step is to send it out to publishers. Yes. So I took it, packaged it all up, and Super Bowl Sunday of 2 years ago, I guess now, last year, Super Bowl Sunday of last year, 2021, sent it out to a whole bunch of publishers. Next day, I got a couple letters back. I thought, okay, well, that's cool. They were asking for obviously the full manuscript. And then finally, I got this letter back. It was funny. It was a Sunday morning. I was lying in bed. It was like 5 o'clock in the morning. I was checking my emails and I see this email from Black Rose Writing. And I remember sending something to these people. What could this be? And I'm looking at it and there's an attachment and I didn't have my glasses. It's like 5. So I'm actually hitting my wife in the hour going, will you wake up and read this? What does this say? And it said contract offer and going like, what? So I, of course, out of bed looking for my glasses and I'm reading this thing and going like, holy smoke. Like, so this is 5 in the morning. I'm bouncing off the walls, waking my kids up, waking my wife off going like this, look what's on my phone. Right. So that was an amazing day to actually think that, like somebody actually thinks this is decent. And then, there was a few other offers and stuff came through time, but I'm one of those people that, you stick with the one who brought you to the dance. Right. And Black Rose was the first one. So Black Rose has got both my books. And hopefully they'll have the third one, this summer kind of thing. So, yeah. So then this year has just been a whirlwind. So I signed the contract back in March. I had to have the book in, obviously the business of publishing is a lot harder than the writing of a book.
Yeah. Indie publishing, self-published author here feels and hears that every breathing second of my life.
Like the stuff you do, like, and obviously it's not like it's a Random House publishing company that I'm with and stuff, they're great that they help out with stuff, but you're working on your own promotions. You're working on all that stuff yourself, which I enjoy, right? Because I get the opportunity to meet people like you and talk to you and stuff. I really enjoy this side of it. So the book was released January 18th and it's been pretty good. There's been I've done a couple promotions with Kindle and all that. And so the second one's released in August. But I would say that to anybody thinking that if they go wrap their head against a concrete wall, they're going to become a writer, I would not recommend it.
Yeah, I was about to say, I will probably have to add do not try some of the things mentioned in this episode at home warning at the beginning of this episode. Future me, that's a hint. Anyway.
Yeah, like I said, I've had a few concussions, so more or less I was told you're timed out now. So I'm very careful. Yeah. I used to do a lot of stupid stuff, and that's why I've had a few concussions. But now I bike. I've got a really nice expensive helmet for my head so that when I bike, if I do get hit by or wipe out or whatever, because I still bike in the winter up here, so it's icy and times like that too. So yeah. But like I said, do not try this at home. Do not run into a wall head first thinking, I'm going to become a writer. I'm going to become a world-class athlete or something. The chances are you're going to, I was blessed that this opportunity came out of this, but I would not recommend it.
And to kind of give a little opposite side of the coin story. I have yet to tell anybody this story because I don't know. I don't have any causal proof. In 2011, I was T-boned and almost went through my windshield in my Jeep. Had I not been in a Jeep, I probably would have been killed. And my head, what saved me from going through the windshield, according to the nurse that saw the accident while she was on her way to work. So she basically took over when she got in for her shift for me. Thank God. But she said, I literally saw your head. Your seatbelt came loose. You hit your head on your rear view mirror and it bounced back and hit it a second time. How the hell you walked out of your car when she spun you 3 times?
Wow.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Because when she saw I was climbing across the console because the driver door wouldn't open, I was knocked out. I came to. I had no clue what happened. And all I heard was a man's voice. My dad's probably a memory of him saying, when you get hit in the front end of your car and you think you're okay to get out and you don't think there's help on the way, try to get out in case it's on fire.
Mm-hmm.
For whatever reason, that's all I heard in my head. But up to that point, I was a prolific, not published, just writing on my own while I was in high school and college writer. And within 2 years, I stopped writing. Now, mind you, I lost my critique partner in that time, but I'll admit, in reflection of our episode, I was like, I wonder if that, because it was all frontal lobe impact for me.
Yeah, right here, right on my temple.
Yep. For me, it was right in over on here because the bruise marks were mostly on this side of my face. And the raccoon eyes were the worst. So I'm guessing that's where it mostly was. And I sort of kind of look back and I wonder, did that impact change me at all and me not even realize it? And for anyone looking for information, I'm not a doctor. We're just talking about analogous experiences. If you want more, I have information on concussions in the description box. We're not health professionals. Don't self-diagnose this. If it goes unself-diagnosed, it can kill you. Teacher speaking from football injuries.
Yeah.
Watch
and like
what
I said,
happens saying so.
My first injury is back, like my first concussion was back like in the late 80s. And back then they treated it a lot different than they do now, right? Like, so here's an ice pack and go sit in the corner kind of thing. Whereas now it's a lot different. But yeah, let's face it, they can figure out the heart. They can pretty much do anything from about like, the neck down, but they cannot figure out the brain. Yeah. They can't figure out the brain. And
too much gray matter.
Yeah. So yeah, like you said, to sit there and try to diagnose it, if you've hit your head and you have that nausea feeling or whatever, you need to go to the hospital because you've probably been concussed. And your first one, the way I look at it is the first one's kind of free, but after that they start taking their toll.
I've seen where first ones have not been free with freshman football players, though. I will say that. A former English teacher colleague was the freshman football coach, and I attended a funeral with him once, put it that way.
Yeah.
For a kid who his first game got a concussion, they checked him. The EMTs checked him and he cleared the check. Yeah. They should have rechecked him before the end of the game and made him sit out the rest of the game, and they didn't.
And that's where it goes. Like when I talk about fighting and stuff, it's those little hits. I was probably, when I was training, taking probably 100 a night. The little ones, right? That were just the taps on the head, but that's enough to start that bruising. That's enough to start those issues. And you do that night after night after night kind of thing. And then when the big one does hit, if you think about, like, for me, really the way it was kind of even explained, the big one wasn't the problem. It was all those little ones that just made the big one even worse. So
And we kind of covered my 5th question in our conversation, so I'm going to go ahead and recap us in and get recapped into writing a little bit. But this is all valid information, so I'm glad we kind of tangented into it naturally, honestly. So, as far as genres go, you specifically do thriller crime, it sounds like?
Right now, yep. Um,
Is that where you want to stay? Because I've read some other Black Rose, like Catherine Black and whatnot, in her books, and I know some other Black Rose published authors. That's why I'm like, is that all they do, or will they let you branch into other areas then, or whatnot?
yeah, Black Rose actually has quite the variety of Black Rose writing. They have quite the variety of different genres of books. So right now, I'm sticking with the Family of Killers kind of line with David and his family. I probably got about I got about 5 books, not ready to go, but like outlined. I've almost got the first draft of the third one done. I know what the fourth one's going to be, and I know what the fifth one's going to be, and I think the fifth or sixth might be the one to wrap up the series. Um, I love conspiracies. I am a conspiracy nut. I have many tinfoil hats, so to speak. So I think and I even throw a bit of that into my books and stuff. Lies Lead to Death has quite a little bit about like the Kennedy and some of the Reagan years and stuff. But I think I've got one or two that I really want to write that would be conspiracy heavy. And then I've also got a couple horror ideas that I've got kind of jotted down in my books too that I would like to explore.
And as far as research goes, do you do any like check newspapers, check dates and spelling of names research, or do you go beyond that surface level?
It depends. Like obviously the weapons and stuff, when I'm talking about guns, I do a lot of research with that. How to kill somebody. I got a couple friends that are nurses, so when I'm using chemicals to kill somebody, I'll ask one of my friends, like, okay, what would I do? Would it be would that, can I just jam that into the thigh, or does it have to go into a vein? So I'm learning a lot about that too. So trying to get the details right so that, like I said, historically I've got it right. So like I might have to. I got one chapter in Lies Lead to Death where it takes place over in Africa, and I actually did the research to make sure that the dates made sense. And the U.S. government actually did do some of this intel stuff that my character's involved in as well. So, like I said, I do research, but I don't know. Sometimes you think like, am I doing enough research, or do I really need to delve down deep into this? And that's the funny thing too. Like I find sometimes, like I'm sitting there going, I'm writing it, and I'm just going with the flow, and then I'm looking back going, I wonder if I should be digging deeper into that, or does that seem good where it is, right? Because it's a fine line, I find, where to be with that.
Yeah, I think actually you and I might have the same editor, Suze, maybe.
No.
Sue Simpson? No? Okay.
No.
I thought maybe if you were with Black Rose Publishing, you were running in similar circles with her. She recently, and she and I were talking about whether or not I should add simply a 1-sentence reference to Notre Dame in my books. And I'm like, wait a minute. Everyone knows my book is currently in the year 1666. What's going on with Notre Dame? Is there even a Notre Dame standing? Is this one of those instances where it was torn down? And she said, you care way too much about this one reference, girl. But someone will call you on it, is what you risk if you don't.
Exactly.
And I'm wondering if that's maybe what you're feeling a little bit of. How far do I have to go down the research rabbit hole so I make sure I don't get called out, right?
Right. Yeah. You don't want to go too far, but then again, you want to make sure you've got your, even how to load a gun and stuff. I've got a friend that's a police officer, so it's like, okay, so what do you actually do when you're loading this gun, and what guns do you, stuff like that too, right? So that I'm trying to make it authentic, but like you said, you can go too far as well.
Yeah, and for you, I could see where your too far might be going as far as, well, someone who's right-handed with a gun would do it this way, someone who's left-handed would do it that way. That might be your too far. Kind of example. Gotcha.
Yeah.
So if you could say anything to yourself from before the head injury, then what would it be?
I would say buy Pfizer stocks. Right? Come on. We all would. Knowing what we went through the last 2 years, buy Pfizer or Moderna stocks.
Yes. That would be a wise investment. Agreed.
But seriously, I think I think if I could, the first thing I'd tell myself is spend more time with my dad because he left too soon. So I think we all feel that way, right? But that would definitely be the first
Mhm.
thing I'd be saying to myself is like, you know what? Dad's not around a whole lot longer, so you need to spend more time with him. And then secondly, it would be, you know what, just get up every day and do your thing. It'll get better.
It'll
Right.
get better.
Yeah. You
Very
know,
true.
so
Love that because you're proving it did. You took what
mm,
could have been a deadly situation because concussions can be, especially in your
mhm.
case where they're repeat applications. And you took a nasty situation and you're thriving through it.
Yep.
Congratulations.
Thanks.
So in movies, we see where sometimes it starts, like we said, with a bump on the head, and it ends the same way for a lot of artistic outlets. Do you fear the same happening? A second concussion removing the joy of writing while leaving you alive, given what the doctors have said, while leaving you alive? And do you think you're more protective to prevent one from happening to avoid finding out if that'll be what turns the writing off?
Yes. Especially like even this week, we had a bunch of snow and I slipped walking into work. It's like, oh, I've had, I will say since the concussion, I cracked one bike helmet. Same thing,
Oh,
stupid
yikes.
story. Wait to hear this story. So I was down the States with my in-laws, biking, biking up a hill. I was going down the hill doing like almost 60 mile an hour or 100 kilometers an hour.
Yikes.
No problem, right? Had a blast going down this mountain at that speed. Then I get on the trail, right? On this one little trail where they had just put that coating over the pavement. Could see my car. I'm less than a mile, like I'm a kilometer away from my car. I go around the corner, the tires kick out. I fall over at like 7 mile an hour.
Like a random rock or pebble or something
Yeah,
kind of deal.
it was just that
Oh my
slippery surface because
goodness.
it was a little wet. But yet, like I said, half an hour earlier, I was doing 60 mile an hour down the side of a hill kind of thing. And I actually landed and cracked my helmet open. It's like, oh no, like, because like you said, every little bump to the head now is a concern. So when I'm biking, I got this. So the next helmet I bought after that one, it's actually designed for concussions and stuff to help prevent them.
Ooh.
So it has a whole wafering side inside of it where that actually collapses as well as the helmet and stuff. So it wasn't cheap, but it's definitely,
Worth
when you're
it.
talking about your brain, you kind of, I'd rather have a broken helmet than scrambled eggs for a brain kind of thing. So that's,
Agreed.
but like in the winter and stuff, I do take it a little bit more carefully now because knowing what knowing what I've been told and, like you're worried about it. And then, like you said too, I always think about, just like in the movies, I always think like, if I was to crack my head one more time, even
It
if
could
there's
go
no other
away.
side effects, do I just lose that one little thing of the ability to write again? It's kind of funny that you think that way, uh, but who knows, right?
And that
You
kind of
know,
came out of my reflection of I wonder if I did lose a little
mhm,
inkling to that and had to rebuild it over time
yeah,
because
like it's definitely a strange thing for me. Like I said, I've always been pretty creative. I've always been good for making up stories and stuff, and like
I,
like people say I was always good for thinking on my feet kind of thing to get myself out of trouble when I was younger. So I always had that creativity and the imagination. It was just actually being able to focus and putting it on a piece of paper. Or let's face it, we don't use paper anymore. Putting it on a computer screen.
I'm trying to get out of killing trees, I promise. Some of us teachers like our paper still.
Mhm.
Sorry.
I still do. Like I keep journals and stuff, and it's all on paper.
Hmm.
I tried doing it like on OneNote or some kind of like computer program, and to me, it doesn't seem real unless I'm using a pen and piece of paper. There's something still about writing with a pen and paper.
And if I type it up, I want to print it off and write on it
Yeah,
anyway. That's my
exactly.
other issue. That's my
Yeah,
other issue for
yeah.
sure. Wow. What are the dangers of concussions, even the small ones? Death being the biggest one.
So for me, this one of the small things I have is memory loss with names. So, and I'm not talking about meeting someone new and forgetting their name like we all kind of do, but I will be at work and I've worked at the same university for 16 years now, and I've worked with a lot of guys for 16 years, and I can have them in my office talking to me and I will be going, what is their name? What is their name?
Or
And then 2 minutes later it comes back. but it's like I will be sitting looking at this person that I've known for 16 years going like, oh, what is their name? And and I hide it. Obviously I'm not sitting there doing that, but you're listening to the conversation and still kind of struggling trying to figure out what that name is, and then it just pops back. So that's one of the weird things I have, that that's nothing serious really for the most part. Yeah, and I'm happy that that's just it. I have a little bit of slurred speech with some words now that, yeah, and that's just weird too, that it's just certain words you used to be able to pronounce that you can't now. And no matter how much you practice them or try to say them, they just will not come out the right way. Right. So
I developed a small stutter afterwards. Like after it happened, my mom said, "You stutter now." And she said, "When did that happen?" And I tried to think back and I said, "The only thing I can think that happened is my car accident."
mhm.
And she said, "Really? And like you were saying, the memory fog, it's so bad
Yeah.
about particular events for me. Like I'll lose entire tracks of time in the year or two after that accident happened.
Yeah. For me, the almost like the 2000 teens didn't, and you know what? I think that's kind of a whole world thing. It seems like the last 15, 20 years really accelerated, but for me, it seems like that too. Like the other thing, the other small issue I have is I cannot do roller coasters or rides anymore either.
No,
Right?
I struggle with those too. You're right.
The last time I did, because the kids were still kind of young, so we would go to Wonderland up here, and it's like what do you call it, Five Flags or whatever, and the kids love roller coasters, so I got on the one roller coaster with them, and it felt like my brain was being taken and doing somersaults and spun side to side, and I got off that ride and I ran to the closest bush and I was done for the day. And I walked around in the fog rest of the day, taking photos of them being on rides, but like that was and I haven't been on a ride since. I even I used to love mountain biking, and I find now if I go single track mountain biking and it's hard, like say it's the middle of summer, it's really hard, dry, and it's a lot of bouncing. It feels like my brain is almost dislodged.
You can feel the helmet rattling. Yep.
So I stick to roads and paved like trails and stuff now. But yeah, those are the only, and they're small compared to what, like you said, let's face it, they're all small little things compared to what really could have happened. And
right.
Like loss of limbs, paralyzed, total memory loss, and you hear, like I said, you hear all kinds of crazy stories where people have learned how to play the piano or speak a second language. For me, it was writing. And like I said, but unfortunately, we're just that little 5, maybe 10%. There's all these other poor people that still suffer every day with the headaches, with the neck aches, with the blurred vision or the crazy vision kind of thing. Like, I will say I wear reading glasses now, but that could just be age too. But yeah, like I'm just thankful it wasn't, the angels were looking after me that day too. They kind of, they did what they needed to keep me safe. So.
Yeah, I tell my husband, jokingly and not sometimes, I do wonder if I had my dad in the vehicle with me that day. He had passed about a year and 2 months before my accident. And literally, I was at a red light. It turned green. I was fine. Went to go pull out. SUV comes in at 60 miles an hour and nails me. Jeez. They came off the interstate, didn't even stop. My husband, then fiance, had just dropped me off at my apartment to pick up my car to go for a study session with a college friend. He got a call, and there was the nurse that was behind me that took care of me saying, "Hey, I have your fiance here. She was in a car wreck." He had been with me only 2 hours beforehand, maybe.
That's the scary thing, right?
Yeah. He basically got back to his college campus and was about to get ready to go into work and had to call his brother to come and bring him down to be with me. So yeah, like how you were saying, life flashes before your eyes. I'm wondering if your wife had similar when she got that phone call.
She didn't even know until like the next day, right? Because like I said, at that point, I didn't really know what had happened. I knew something was off. I knew I took a good hit to the head, but at that, like I'd taken a bunch of them. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't really think anything of it. And then I thought, okay, well, the fact that I couldn't remember how to get home, well, you know what? It's probably just a little side effect. It's not that big of a deal. And then it started to snowball. And then you started realizing, you know, then you're going through the emotional stuff and all that. It's like,
Oh
oh, yeah.
man.
Like, so mine wasn't like a quick diagnosis that night. It took probably about a week before I really went to the doctor and said, okay, something's not right here. You know?
Oh wow, I didn't realize it was a full week. So
Yeah,
yeah, she probably didn't appreciate that news at all.
no. And then you come home saying, so just so you know, I have to do something else because I'm pretty sure you're not going to be changing my diaper in about 5 years. So.
No, she probably had enough of that with the children, to be fair.
Yeah, exactly.
To be fair. So, what is some advice you have for people healing from concussions in a world where they seem rather common and aren't always taken seriously? Because they're not.
They're not. And like I said, a lot of people will just tough it out. You definitely need to see a doctor. And let's face it, we both know it's not like a broken bone where you're going to see it and they're going to be able to take an x-ray and say you're healed. For me, obviously there was some swelling and stuff and there was some bruising, so they were able to see that, and then another MRI showed that it had healed up and everything was good there. But still there was the internal, like there was the physical part was healed, but the actual brain part, the thinking part, the gray matter part was not. And we don't know if it ever will, right? Like, who knows if I ever get those memories back or whatever. But the longer you leave it, the worse it's going to be. And to think that, oh, you know what? Like I said, I kind of said that like flippantly, like the you get one for free. You don't, because the damage starts with the first one. But the more you have, you know, like if you're someone like me who's done stupid things in their life, you know, like on dares and stuff.
I'm the youngest of 5 kids and the only girl. I totally understand that statement.
Yeah, so I've done things on my bike, when I was younger that have definitely affected, that, you bounce the head off trees and stuff. So I wouldn't say I got away with them, but they pile up, right? Yeah, they pile up and you think, okay, well, wow, okay, that was good. And then I think back, like I remember playing hockey one night, and my head was swollen into my helmet, knowing that something happened there. And same thing, that was back like that was back in the 90s when it's like, no, it's just
back when they didn't even do a proper X-ray MRI for that stuff. Oh my goodness.
Drink lots of water and just, kind of keep the lights dim for a couple of days, right? That was really the suggestions they gave you. Whereas now it's a whole series of stuff, right? Like, which is good. And back in the 90s and 80s, they would tell you to rest your brain and stuff. Whereas now it's your brain. You don't want your brain to rest. They want you stimulated with certain ways, kind of thing. So,
and that's the key thing. It's certain ways. Don't get on a computer.
No.
That was the number one thing they told me. You cannot touch a computer for a week.
Yeah.
I'm a student teacher. Can you tell me how I can get around that?
Like I said, I went into work and I thought I was looking into the heart of the sun, and everyone else is going, are you going to turn your computer on today? Because that thing was glowing. I felt like, you remember the Seinfeld episode with Kramer and the chicken, and he opens the door and the big red light. That's exactly how I felt, right?
We had a smart board in our classroom for the teacher I was student teaching for at that time. That's exactly what I told her I felt like when she turned it on the morning I reported back to finish up the last week, because it happened. I had 1 week of student teaching left that fall. Yeah. And I showed up to do the final week and I said, please, can we find a way to not need that on this entire week? It hurt. And you're like, Kramer, exactly.
Yeah. Exactly what it felt like, right? Just that bright light kind of hitting you. And then everything was super bright. Right. And balance is off and stuff. So like I said, you can anybody that does get a concussion, mild or severe, right away, you're going to feel, you're not going to have the balance you had. You're going to feel like you want to throw up, right? If you don't throw up, right? And like I said, things are going to glow that didn't glow before.
That was the thing that bugged me the most. Everything looked like it had a halo or an aura for months.
Yeah, it was weird.
Months. It was so strange. And not like the kind you get when your eyes are gummy either. Everything did. Like looking through a pair of glasses that were meant for you to see that kind of thing.
Yeah, yep.
So you've mentioned multiple times you have 3 or 4 books, 2 out and 2 in the works, it sounds like.
One out. So Family
Okay.
Killers is out right now. It's available on Amazon, all those popular sites, as well as my publisher, Black Rose Writing. Lies Lead to Death, that comes out in August 18th. But pre-sale will be beginning. We can actually mention that. Pre-sale is up and running right now. So if you go to Black Rose Writing,
Link down below, lovelies.
okay, and there's an actual promo code. So I think it's promo 2022. So if you put that in, you get a 15% discount up until August 18th when the book is released. And then like I said, I'm working on the 3rd book now. I hope to have that to the publisher. I've set a deadline of 2 weeks from now to have the first draft done. So then another month and a half of working through that and adding and deleting, and you know how it goes. And so I'm hoping by May to have the product to the publisher. And then we'll see where that goes. And then, like I said, I've got some pretty good notes on the 4th book, and I've got some basic skeleton notes of the 5th book, and some, depending where we go, I've even got I got an idea for a whole book of short stories too on that character and stuff as well. So there could be potentially 6 books. And then, like we talked about, I've got a few other ideas that I'd like you know, like a couple horror ideas and stuff like that. I will not be writing romance. That's one thing I can say.
Well, my only advice as someone who does fantasy with a dash of romance is you're missing out. Most of my sales are either people who have never ever read the genre or people who love romance and not fantasy. So that's the only advisement I can give. It's like 30%-ish of the market. So
yeah,
it's the only thing
crazy.
I can say. It is insane. I'll admit it is insane. So you did say you won't write the romance, but what is one trope or character type you don't think you'll ever include before you get to stop writing? Is there just one thing you won't include in your books?
I don't know. Not that I can think of. I try to keep it no. I got like I said, these books have no romance in them, so there'll be no graphic sex scenes, I guess.
See, I don't. That's why mine's the dash of romance. I don't include what you know. We are adults. You have a mind.
Yeah,
for at least the current series I'm writing, you can figure it out.
Yeah, so that would definitely be one of those. If that's about the only thing I can think not including.
What is one thing you do want to include then?
Like I said, I would really like to do something with crop circles.
Ooh, yes. I live in farm country.
Yeah.
We have senior pranks as crop circles all the time where I live. They're fun. Yeah. And there's like actual meanings behind some of the designs I've heard.
They go over in England and stuff where they have like, you know, the unknown ones kind of thing.
Right.
Yeah, they you know, like the alien technology or, you know, certain, you know, metals or whatever under the ground. So I've got a few ideas of where I could take a crop circle story, you know, base it between England and North America. I kind of like having that bounce between England, Britain, and, you know, Canada, the States. Like I've traveled throughout the state. I've traveled probably more in the States than I have in Canada, you know, even though I live here, because you guys have the nice weather, especially nowadays.
Sure.
Well, at least you can keep. I always say I don't understand why anybody lives in Buffalo, because like Buffalo, it's 2 hours from here. But I'm thinking you guys can. I'm as far south in Canada as I can go, so I can't go to nicer weather in Canada. Where I look at people in Buffalo, and I know a couple of people, I'm going, you can literally pack up and go to Florida and sit in the sunshine every day, but you choose to suffer through 6 months of winter like I have to because I can't get across that border to live, kind of thing, right? So
Where I live, Maryland, is one of their state nicknames is America in miniature. We get all of the weather systems here, so you're preaching to the choir. It literally snowed this morning and has now cleared off.
Right. Well, looking at my window right now, I can't see the house behind me because of the snow.
That's what it was a couple hours ago.
We got that lake effect coming off Lake Huron. So
I was just about to ask, which lake were you closest to by proxy? Because Huron's closer, but Erie's not too far away.
So Huron's to the west of us, Lake Ontario, where Toronto is about an hour to the east of us, and then Erie would be about an hour and a half south of us.
Perfect.
We're in a nice little
Perfect.
spot there, right in southern Ontario. Lots of great areas to bike and stuff. And then, like I said, it's an hour and a half drive to Niagara. I go to Niagara on the Lake, and there's a beautiful trail loop right from Niagara on the Lake down to Fort Erie. It's like you can make it about 100. It's about 150-kilometer bike ride. So
That's not bad.
yeah, it's beautiful. So it's a nice way to spend a day in the summer.
That's a goal of mine. My husband and I have been wanting to get into biking again, and I have yet to tell him this. It's because I actually want to go up and bike around Niagara, and he'll probably now really want to do it because I'm going to have to tell him that. If you're listening, honey, now you know. Anyway,
Yeah, I
so
can give you the trails. I gladly meet you, and we can do it together, kind of thing. It's a beautiful area, right along the border, kind of thing. And then you get to go through Niagara Falls, and you follow that whole river the whole way. It's beautiful.
I bet it is for sure. So, what then, as far as writing advice, do you have to give to any author, not just those of us who have experienced concussions then?
Kind of like what we started off talking about with let the book write itself. Be the vessel, be the instrument. Don't try to take charge. Let it write itself because you'll have a lot better results.
Very much agreed. Very much so.
Yeah.
Well, we are winding down to our very end of our conversation, my dear. It's been a wonderful hour or so with you. Do you have any shout outs to others in your community you would like to give?
I'd like to give obviously to my publisher, Black Rose Writing, to my one friend who lost a dad today, or last week, LH, and that's about it. Obviously my family, who've been a great support through all of this.
Yes, and especially your wife, literally from the beginning, peeking through in your office at
Yeah.
what are you doing? I'm not sure.
I don't know. And she's been between her and my mother-in-law, they've both probably read my books more than I ever have, reading it and just kind of honing it before it gets to the editor and going, like, what about this and stuff. So yeah, my mother-in-law, same thing. She's just had some surgery. So she's doing well too. But between the two of them, I swear they've read, they have been involved from day one, and they've been a great support.
Very much glad to hear that. So I'm going to go ahead and give you solo mode again. Go ahead and recap every place we could find information about you, any events, launches, promo codes, and so on. Recap any of the big things we need to know. And I will also make sure we get those description box links to match. So the screen is all yours.
Okay, so obviously the obvious one, Facebook, is if you look up Stephen W. Briggs, you'll see me. You'll see this face. That's the my description there. So Stephen, the W is the important part. Briggs. BlackRoseWriting.com. If you go on there, you can find both my books, Family of Killers, Memoirs of an Assassin, and Lies Lead to Death. Both are available through Black Rose Writing right now. Lies Lead to Death is on pre-sale, and the promo code is pre-sale 2022. And then obviously Amazon, around the world, Amazon has Family of Killers right now available in Kindle form and also in book form, just like this one. Social media for Instagram and Twitter is Ulster, as in Northern Ireland, Ulster 71. And LinkedIn is Stephen W. Briggs. I actually have a TikTok now, believe it or not. And same thing, Stephen W. Briggs, author, is for TikTok. I think that covers them all.
I was going to say, it's like I kind of feel that we're on the everything. For sure, for sure. Thank you so much for being here with us today, my lovelies. And also make sure you do check out everything he has to share. Again, emphasizing, please check out the information we have below. If you think you or somebody else has a concussion, do not self-diagnose. Always emphasize, go get checked by a doctor urgently, like ER status. Go, please. Don't mess around with your head. Listen to the voices. Don't mess around with them. I think that could be the catch line for this entire episode, because it's kind of applicable in both ways with the writing and the topics. So we're going to go ahead and sign off then, my lovelies. Thank you so much for being here. And as always, we couldn't end this episode without saying take care of you a little bit better each and every day. We know you're worth it. Bye.